today's arrangement just needs 2 different flower types and some large leaves. If you want to learn how to make an arrangement suitable for beginners, then keep watching. Hello everybody, welcome back. It's definitely turning into autumn and it's really gone quite cold today. So I'm layered up and all ready to go with today's design. Now you will have noticed in the intro, I've only got 2 flower types. I've got a large hydrangea, which you might be able to get from the garden if you grow flowers or if you're in the same sort of climate as the UK. If you're choosing something like a gerbera, a carnation or a rose, then you're probably going to need a bigger quantity of flowers because my hydrangeas are quite large, so they fill a really big gap. But have a go, it's a really good one for beginners. It's fabulous to go in a church or in the entranceway, and it's quite a dramatic design with just 2 flower types. My container for today is what we affectionately in the trade call an orchid vase or an orchid container. And if you buy an orchid from a supermarket, then you'll probably find quite often it's going to come sitting in one of these containers. It was a grey colour and I decided to use some of the spray paint, just a couple of thin layers to change the colour. I've used the burgundy spray can, and this is a Florist product, and again I'll link it in the description box should you decide you want to buy one. This is by a company called Oasis, which are very well known in the flower arranging world, and a couple of light dustings over the top has changed the colour, and that's going to be much better suited to my flower colour choice that I've got for today. This one is quite a narrow container, so I'm going to be using 4 main flowers that are going to give me the height, and then a cluster of flowers at the bottom. If you're going to do this with a bigger quantity of flowers, then choose yourself a wider container. Otherwise, there won't be enough room in the top to hold all of your flower stems. But if you choose a smaller selection of flowers, then you will be able to use less foam and a narrower container. Right, I've pre-soaked my floral foam. I've pre-soaked a whole block, so I'll probably be doing another arrangement after this. I'm anticipating that I'm only going to use about half of a block of foam, and that is going to fit quite snugly into my container. I'm going to push it down as far as I can go. Always remember that to keep that floral foam wet, you need to be able to pour water into the bottom so that it's touching the base of the foam. Otherwise it's going to dry out really quickly. And what I'm going to do is leave about an inch or so around the outside edge so that I have enough room to put my flowers in at the side. Foam is really secure in that container. I don't need to add any tape to hold it in position. And if you're a little bit concerned about working with these sharp angles on the corners, then you can use your knife just to take off a little bit of the edge, because that will help create a softer edge and a softer line for you to place your foliage and flowers into. So that's my mechanics all prepared. I've got my floral foam in there, and I've got a big enough quantity of floral foam to hold all my flower stems. If you've been watching me for a while, you'll know that generally a flower arrangement of this type is going to be twice the height of the container. That gives us really good proportions. It means the flower selection is 2/3 and my container represents 1/3. That doesn't happen in all floral design, but it's good for fairly traditional flower arranging work. If you wanted to, you could use a ruler just to help you with the measurements. I've got these amazing gladioli. It's a beautiful colour, and you can see now why I spray painted the base to a really rich burgundy, because it's going to link beautifully with the colour. Now I'm going to go twice the height, and just to explain to beginners, once, twice, so that's looking at cutting my gladioli roughly in this position here. Let's just spin that round so you can see it from a different angle. So if we think about the length of my gladioli, if I laid my container down along the side, that would be once and that would be twice. So cutting my stem comes to about this position here, which would give me a measurement of twice the height of the container. But because the gladioli are so spectacular, I'm going to go a slightly bit longer. I think we can get away with it with the gladioli It's quite a narrow, very elegant flower. And I'm going to do this as a front facing arrangement, but you could quite easily do this all around. Just means that you have to have twice as many flowers. So what I'm going to do here is place my gladioli in almost like a block or a column in the center, and I'm going to do the same with all 4 pieces. Now these gladioli are left over from a job I did on the weekend, so I only have 4 stems. There's a good chance that if you buy them from the supermarket, you will probably have a bunch of 5 or maybe 6, in which case you need to go slightly wider with your container. But what I'm doing here is placing them all at the same height, so we get that really solid structural line. You can slightly fan them out if you want to, but because my gladioli are beautifully straight, I'm going to follow that line and create some visual impact that will draw your eye up and down. And you might notice I am keeping the gladioli leaves because I think I'm going to add them in at the back. So if you were doing this as an all-round design, then here is the back. You would just round off those flowers so that they were facing in all directions. This would be a perfect design for either side of the altar. It would be amazing at Christmas time with some red gladioli. You could add in some Christmas baubles at the bottom or some cones, add a few fairy lights in there, and you're going to get quite an attractive design. You could make them in a matching pair for either side of your mantelpiece, and that would look really dramatic over Christmas. So really simple for beginners. It's a straight column of flowers in the middle. Anything that represents a line, so it could be larkspur, delphinium, you might have stock. And generally speaking, your gladioli would probably be in a tighter bud than I'm using today, but close together, neatly compact, so that you've got that really strong vertical column there in the middle. And then at the base, I'm going to mass the hydrangea heads right the way around the bottom, so we get an interesting different form and different texture at the bottom. But before I do that, I'm going to add in my huge Fatsia. Now these have been given to me by one of the ladies that comes here to flower arranging class. And what I'm going to do is just trim off the bottom so that I haven't got such a large leaf. It really is going to be out of proportion. The scale and the size of these leaves are going to be too much at their full size. So just cutting them down to give that much more rounded, more delicate shape is going to work better. So if I just move this to one side and I can get my leaf in the low down camera, then you can watch how I just very gently cut off and make a circular shape. Now you can do this with lots of greenery. If you don't have single flat leaves like I'm using, then think about flat foliages and nothing that's too bunchy and too fussy, because it'll detract away from the simplicity and the minimalist style of this arrangement. But doesn't that look absolutely wonderful? So we've got 2 so far. I'm just going to do it with one more large leaf because I think that is all I'm going to use. If I need more, I can cut another one towards the end. And if you really wanted to, and you wanted to mix in a bit of the burgundy spray paint as well, you can just give a little bit of a dusting over the top to pick up on the burgundy colours of your flower. So hopefully you can see that there. Looks a bit dark at the moment, but when that dries, it's going to have a lovely burgundy colour. And you can do that with lots of leaves, particularly leading up to Christmas, and you can add silver or gold and it's going to give you that really lovely Christmassy feel. So before I fill in with the hydrangea heads, I'm going to use the large Fatsia right the way down low in the foam so that the leaves are almost sitting on top of the rim of my container. So we've got one there at the front. Now I'm going to place one in on the side so that we're rounding off the front. Now I'm working on this backwards, but I'm sure you can get the shape and the style. And then we're going to add one more in on what is probably your left hand side as you're looking at it. So 3 very large leaves. If you don't have these, think about a flat foliage rather than something that's really too fussy, because it's going to make it quite messy and quite busy. And then just to finish off the back section and make it a bit neater, I'm going to use the remainder of the base of the gladioli. So this is the bottom, a really interesting version of a line material again, so it's going to draw your eye upwards. What we don't want to do is have anything too fussy at the back, which is going to clutter the arrangement up and lose that quite minimalist style that we're looking to create. Now I left the Fatsia quite large at the bottom because my hydrangea heads are quite big, but if I decide they're a little bit too wide and too overpowering at the bottom, I can quite simply cut them shorter. But now is the chance to add in those lovely big hydrangeas. Now these have just come from my garden. The season is pretty much finishing and they're starting to naturally dry off on the shrub itself. So if you want to bring them in and dry them, then now is the time to do it. Just place them in a vase. Make sure that they're fairly dry to touch when you bring them in. If they're damp, if there's water on there, then they won't dry particularly well. But they are really good for using through the winter months and decorating the home when there's not so many flowers available from the garden. Right, so let's take a better look at it so I can get a nice circular shape. Now I'm only using 2 flower types here, but you could quite easily use a second set of flowers and make the bottom section much fuller and much wider. But sometimes it's quite difficult to get hold of a big choice of flowers. So I thought 2 flowers for this week's video would work really well. Right, and that I think is going to be my final flower before I spin it around. So we've got this big emphasis on the bottom, those flat leaves running around the outside, and then that tall, spiky flower in the middle to create some upward movement. And now I'm thinking my Fatsia here are a little bit too big at the bottom. They're very eye-catching, a little bit too wide. So I'm just going to go round again and trim them off so that they're slightly smaller. And if you're thinking about recreating a design like this, just really think about the 3 basic shapes that I have in this arrangement. So we have something to represent a spike. If you don't have the gladioli, you might have phormium, stelia leaves. I've named quite a few flowers at the beginning of the session. The flowers at the back, to make that visual line at the back, need to be something that's tall, long, and represents a spike or a line. Then we've got the rounder flowers at the front, which are my hydrangeas. Could be a carnation, a gerbera, you could have a more open rose. Dahlias this time of the year would work fantastically well. And then at the front, we just need something that's fairly flat and not too fussy and too busy, otherwise it becomes really quite messy. So I'm just going to finish off the back section of the arrangement with 2 Fatsias that I've sprayed with that burgundy spray paint. These hopefully will fit in quite nicely, just tucked in at the back. It's going to help cover my floral foam and to give a little bit of a backdrop to that floral design. And that's my very simple design finished for today. So just 2 flower types. A striking design that I think would work really well. You could add another layer of flowers in here if you wanted to, or as I said, that could be Christmas baubles, could be little eggs at Easter time. Just think about layering up different flower types at the bottom with that impressive line in the middle, and you've got a really beautiful design that isn't going to cost you a huge amount of money and is going to look fantastic either in the home or in a place of worship. Now don't forget, if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, then please do so. Hit that notification bell to be informed every time I upload a new tutorial. As ever, thank you very much for watching. I look forward to seeing you next time, and goodbye for now.